It's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. You know, we started this show with what? Inflation, right? Costs going up for a whole bunch of things, from gas to groceries to the dentist visits you might do. It's bananas, and rent is not an exception to that. Those rents all across the country, they're going up. Something like 30% in Cincinnati and Seattle, by 50% in Austin. And you know who that's particularly tough for? People living on fixed incomes. People like maybe your parents or your grandparents, seniors. A group of renters in LA, including some of those seniors, are now fighting back after a pretty unique set of circumstances priced them out of their homes. NBC's George Solis explains.
Home to nearly 30,000, Los Angeles' Chinatown is a gateway to the past, but not immune to present-day pressures like a higher cost of living.
I have the rent increases for over the years, starting this one, 2004.
At first, the rise in rent was modest, like the apartment Alejandro Gutierrez has called home for the last 26 years.
2007, 835, and so on. 2008, 883.
Still nominal increases.
Yeah.
Then, in 2021, a bill for $2,450 appeared, more than double the $1,160 he'd been paying.
I couldn't believe that.
He's not alone. Bonded over fears of eviction, fellow residents of Hillside Villa Apartments have in some cases seen their rent more than tripled, blindsided by the end of a 30-year agreement between the city and landlord that kept rents affordable. ¿Cuál es el temor? What's the fear now that this price increase is happening?
That we cannot afford to pay this rent. I cannot afford to pay that market rate. None of us here in this building cannot afford to pay those rent increases. That's why we started fighting back.
A much larger housing war is brewing, especially for many seniors on fixed incomes. Rents up as much as 15 to 50% across the country.
Senior renters are more likely to be cost burdened.
Jun Zhu with the Urban Institute says the nation's current housing policy is not equipped to meet the incoming demand, and that more than half of these households threatened by skyrocketing rent will be non-white.
The bottom line is that we do not have enough supply of the affordable rental units for the seniors.
Right now, 1 in 5 renter households who qualify for housing help receive it. Waitlists are also long, and the paperwork can be challenging. In the next 20 years, some estimates say there'll be another 5.5 million senior renters in the U.S. With cost of rent soaring nationwide, some tenants fear how they'll be able to afford the future. In May, the Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously to buy the building from the landlord and has discussed using eminent domain to seize it, a government power that has largely been reserved to force residents out to make room for new development. Trinidad Louise, organizer with the LA Tenants Union, says the case could set a precedent.
This is the first time in the history of LA, in its 150 years or so, that eminent domain has been used to save affordable housing and to keep tenants housed.
While the landlord declined to speak to NBC News, in a letter to the LA City Council, his attorney argues the purchase or seizure of the 124-unit building is not needed, saying the majority of the households already have Section 8 vouchers to help subsidize their rent. Adding, the other 37 residents are almost certainly eligible and should be provided vouchers, arguing that buying a building for the private benefit of a very few would be grossly wasteful.
Perdiendo todo.
But residents like Adela Cortez remain hopeful the landlord strikes a deal with the city. Adela says if they end up getting evicted, she's going to lose everything. She's taking care of her grandkids, but it's not just that, her community is here. A community that is living in fear they could lose their home, or in their words, their family.
We are familia. We help each other. So we don't want to lose that.
George is joining us now live. George, I'm so glad you brought us that reporting. You're there at the building. How soon could the city take over, and what else are people there doing while they're kind of in this limbo to see what happens?
Yeah, Hallie, good to be with you. And right now, the city and the landlord are still hopefully trying to work out some deal to keep rents affordable for all residents. Now, if that fails, well, then the property will need to be reappraised, and then a new offer will have to be put forth to the landlord. And if that fails, well, then that could trigger that lengthy and precedent-setting case of eminent domain. As for the residents, well, right now they're on a rent strike to really hammer home that point. They are effectively being priced out.